You do a lot of military flying, and in the military, I'm guessing that kind of equipment exists and has existed for a while. Is some kind of software or display that broadcasts the whole environment. Is that true?
Well,
you might not be able to talk about it.
No. We have a radar. So my radar is basically effectively the same thing as what your terminal controller is looking at. I have my radar that has a certain azimuth and elevation that I can move. And we have also interrogators. So the same thing as what the air traffic controller is able to check. Because if I want to intercept somebody, let's say in the Vancouver area, and there's hundreds of tracks there, it's very difficult for me to see which one is who. And then my cursor is going to be moving all over the place. So there's equipment that we can have that we can interrogate a specific code, and then it cleans up the entire picture except that one person that's squawking that code. That's on the interrogator side. But we also have a radar like any fighter aircraft, modern fighters, and it's basically just raw energy that we're sending, and then it's pinging off the aircraft coming back to me, and I'm seeing some raw hits from that target. So we can maneuver our radar to look different location, both in azimuth and elevation. It's not so much of a TCAS per se, but it's got its own onboard radar, so we don't need that.
Do you have some kind of digital battlefield management system that broadcasts the whole situation?
Well, actually, so we called it a situation awareness page. So we call it an SA page.
Yeah.
And what we have is a data link that's broadcasted between all the players. So we have either within all the friendlies in the air and also the friendlies on the ground are all within one data link system. Think of it as an internet network, and we're able to broadcast everything that we see to the other aircraft, and the same thing what they see to us. So that increases the situation awareness, and that's why we call it the SA page. And it's a God's eye view. Think of your HSI, so your horizontal situation indicator, a God's eye view, but now you have all the targets or the friendlies
lit up.
Right on top of it.
Right. So that would give you the whole picture, including where the tankers are, where the rest of your formation is, that kind of thing, right? And who not to shoot.
Well, exactly. No, I 100% agree. And to a certain extent, the ADSB does provide you that
same thing,
that kind of information, because when you're thinking of the ground radar that's from the air traffic controller, it's feeding that information through the ADSB. So yeah, it's a cheap man's version of what we have if you want to increase your SA.
Right, that makes sense. Do you use any civilian equipment in that airplane, or is it all military hardware?
I use an iPad.
Really? Foreflight?
Yeah, Foreflight. The military now has Foreflight and iPads. You got to remember, for the alert facility, the F-18, we cover from the West Coast, so BC, all the way to the western side of Ontario, all the way to the Atlantic, and all the northern states. So you talk about North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Washington. So imagine the amount of publication I need to carry in my airplane that I could be at any moment given in time having to go that location. So I need, approach plate from Washington. I need approach plates from North Dakota. I need approach plate, all the approach plates from BC, Prairies, Ontario, all the way to Inuvik. So the iPad, I touch a page now and I got it all.
How did it work before iPads existed? You just carry all these approach plates in some locker?
I have an armrest of publication.
Now, what was that like having to find the right publication, amongst 20 or 30 of them, and then find the right page?
That is why. Have you never realized that those little booklets have 3 bars on top or 4 bars?
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're for. You look down, you go like, oh, I need the 3-bar one because it's the prairies, or prairies I think it's for. But yeah, that's how you get to know them. But yeah, the iPad has been a huge improvement for us, both because of the reduction of weight, the increased size, available within the cockpit. But even if we do some intercepts, we can take some pictures with the iPad. And well, we need that, and then and also the SA dot, to be able to show when you're flying where you are, reference that that routing or the approach plate, that increases your SA also.
Do you navigate off the iPad, or do you navigate off the airplane systems?
No, we have a full functioning FMS system that's been designed and built basically on a Challenger 604. So it's almost the same nomenclature as far as the colors, the magenta, the cyan, green, the yellows, all the different fields are all the same. It increased the capability navigation wise of the F-18 a great amount. And actually the F-18 was the first fighter in the world to have a full functioning FMS. Now all the other fighters are all getting on board with it now.
Is it so when you navigate, you just dial in where you want to go, and then it draws the pink line kind of thing, like a Garmin, or you enter in like the coordinates on the INS system, or how's it work?
No, so we have we have an EGI, so it's a combined GPS INS, and so our GPS itself is or the EGI. Our kit, the FMS, is an MSO 145 versus most of the GPS unit out there that you have. They're either a TSO 145 or a TSO 129. So if you recall, the TSO 129 is more of the older generation GPS, which you needed to do the rain prediction if you went somewhere, versus the TSO 145 has rain monitoring. And has the WASP capability. So any of the TSO 145 has WASP. So if you understand the WASP principle, is basically a satellite-based.
It's more accurate GPS.
Yeah, it's basically it has ground-based station that knows the errors of that location, and it feeds that to your GPS.
Right.
Now, the F-18 works a little bit differently. We have two different signals, one signal to tell us our position, and then the other signal to be able to calculate the different, errors based on ionos, time errors or ionospheric errors or things that can affect the signal, weather, and so on. And then basically when it comes back, it gives us that error correction. So we don't have a WASP capable unit, but we have an equivalent, which gives us the ability to still do LNAV approach and so on, and fully functioning FMS. So we have, you can set up a departure, a full pilot navigation departure, do your en route. If you type in, and it's all HOTASable, so it's all on a throttle and stick system. So basically, you can put all the letters, A, B, C intersection, it'll come up. We have a similar system as a normal GPS where you have a nearest function. So we have a page that we call emergency function. And at a page, we can set up different length of runway, different approach, or even cables. So if I say I want cable, well, obviously in Alberta, it's only going to show me Cold Lake as an airport.
Yeah, but if you're in Southern California, you've got 5 options.
Exactly. So, but that might be something critical for a fighter where on the F-18, for instance, if we lose the right engine, that brings in a whole set of issues where you have no more brakes, no more nozzle steering, and your emergency gear has to come down. So that's why we typically do an arrested landing on those. So having that on the emergency page and be able to go nearest, cable, and then it shows me all the airports from closest to farthest, that helps.
So all of those systems, to me, like with the HOTAS and everything, the hands-on throttle and stick, and the HUD and everything are designed to bring your head back out of the cockpit.
I 100% agree. So one thing that the military does very well, that we train from the beginning. We know our checks by heart, and we don't spend a great amount of time looking at the checklist when we're doing our startup, when we're taxing. We have very regimented checks, even our combat checks and so on. And then when it comes to the systems, you're right, the hands-on and throttle and stick system, the reason why they're there is so that you can operate most of the systems without having to bring your eyes in and push buttons. Because every time you bring your eyes in, you're trying to look out, you may now lose that target. And like I said, you lose sight, you lose the fight.
Right, that makes sense to me. So you said you don't use a checklist at all, really, like a paper checklist?
So now
From
we don't
startup to shutdown?
Nope. No, we
That's
don't
the way
use
it should be.
So we don't use a checklist. We know it all by heart. But everything we do, even when I bought my F1 rocket, as simple as it sounds, I created my checklist based on the flow. So a flow is how you move about the cockpit. So the F-18 is very easy. How you go from the left to the right, you turn everything off. And then you go from right to left and you turn everything on once you've started. So everything, has a certain way of doing it. But yeah, on any aircraft that I've flown in the military, pretty much, you need to know your checklist by heart. Now, the only time that the checklist is pretty much mandatory is whenever it's an emergency procedure and it's not a mandatory bold item. So we have red pages, yellow pages. The red pages need to be known by heart. Those are memory item. Those are bold item. Yep. And once you've done those, then you revert to the yellow pages now where it's either non-critical emergency or you've done the critical portion of that emergency. And now it's the follow-on actions.
So does that philosophy then scale up into multi-engine transport, or do those get more complicated than it's worth?
Yeah, it's not my world. But I would say they have an entire crew to deal with that versus for us, we're single pilot in our aircraft. Right. So we, to be more efficient and quicker, we need to know these things by heart.
Right. That makes sense to me.